I'm head of youth services at McMillan, and I've been here for 16 years. Next week, actually, is my anniversary. Yeah, it's been a long time. So I've been the head of the department for about 9 years now, and I absolutely love what I do. I work with the kids, and I can't imagine doing anything more rewarding. So I am going to talk a little bit today about how parents and caregivers are the first teachers for kids. And when I say teach in this, it doesn't mean the formal sense of teaching in any way, shape, or form. It's totally informal. It can be done anywhere during the day. So there's not a lot of us here, so I just want to get a little information about why you're here, what you want to get out of this. So if I don't have something in my slides, that I can maybe slide it in there for you. So
my name is Raquel, and I work over on 12th Street and am a CCS service facilitator.
I do the same, so just looking at how we can help the kids in the program.
Great. I know what you guys are. All right.
So we're with the Family Center.
Oh, great.
And for me, just looking for ideas on how we can better help the parents that come in and help the children.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, that gives me a good idea. So we, as a society, of course, we want our kids to be ready to read but not just read, to learn when they get to school. And that, there's a lot of different ways to prepare them. It's not just reading skills. In fact, that's one of the, as a librarian, I love reading, and I know we need to, build on that. But there are other learning skills that we need, and social skills, emotional skills, and things like that. And all of these things build on those building blocks. So the first 3 years of life, the most important part of the learning process. Those formative years are, I guess, really the basis for everything that's learned once kids get to school. People think a lot of times that you need the fancy toys that they try to sell you that say, we can teach your kid to read by the age of 2. Well, it's not really necessary, and it may actually be harmful in some ways to do those sorts of things. So you can actually teach kids during the day without using anything fancy. You don't need electronics. You just need, a cardboard box, or, maybe make a chef's hat out of paper and, pretend that you're playing cook or whatever. So, you can do things with very little, which I think is important to get across to people. So early brain development, I'm not going to go too much into that, but genetics are obviously, they play a little bit of a role in brain development, but the nurturing and the environment play an even bigger role. So we have to make sure that the environment that kids are in at an early age is something that's going to produce all of those little neurons that they need to build through in their brain. And by age 3, 80% of the basic brain architecture is already in place. So they're building their synapses and things, and then by around age 3, they kind of weed out the ones that haven't been used. So it's important to get as many of those used as possible, so they're not weeded out. Obviously they're going to build and weed throughout their lives for quite some time, but that's the biggest area of growth is during that time before age 3. Kids' brains are wired to learn, so they will learn any language you give them. If English isn't the first language of the parents, then use whatever language they're comfortable with. If they're Spanish speakers or whatever, they should use the language that they're most comfortable using, because kids will pick it up. Let's see. So this program that I use is called Every Child Ready to Read at Your Library, and it's a program that was developed by the Association for Library Services to Children, which is a division of the Public Library Association. And there are 5 skills that they want to develop before school are talking, singing, reading, writing, and playing. So those are the things that we can do to help get kids ready to learn. And they're all very easy things to do, which I think is important when, especially when talking with parents, to get them to understand that they don't have to have a degree in education to do any of these things. So the first thing is talking. Talking with children helps them with oral language. It helps them to learn the back and forth of communication. It also helps them to be able to express themselves. So when they get to school, they can tell the teacher, you know, I need this or I want this, instead of maybe acting out in a way to get things. So they can use their words instead of their behavior to get things. Singing is a huge part of it. Singing is a little bit different than talking because when we sing to kids, when you sing, you're breaking the language up into its parts. So you're breaking words up into syllables, so kids can start to understand that words are made up of different sounds. So it is a little bit different than just talking. Reading, of course, reading together is one of the biggest ways to help kids become proficient readers when they get to school. And, you know, if you build something that is fun into their everyday routine by reading to them when they're, you know, comfortable and happy, then they're going to have those fond memories of that. And hopefully that will produce a reader who actually likes to do it and not just because they have to. Writing, of course, babies don't really write, but and neither do toddlers necessarily. But they need to have their fine motor skills developed so that they can hold the pencil in the correct way. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go about that. When they first start scribbling, obviously it doesn't look like much of anything, but eventually it becomes more coherent, and they start to learn what the letters look like and what they should look like on the paper. Playing is the best thing ever, and all of these things have an element of play to them, but play is the work of kids. That's what they do. That's how they learn pretty much everything. And I think that it's important to know that, you know, it may not look like they're actually learning anything, but they really are. They're learning about how to develop relationships with people. They're learning how to function in society, basically. So, and it gives them kind of a general knowledge. So if you can play camping, let's say, you know, you don't necessarily have to take them camping, but if you play camping at home and you kind of add elements to what a real camping adventure would be, then they know what that is. They know what that's like. Then they can take that. And if somebody says, I'm going camping this weekend, they maybe have more of an idea. Oh, I know what that's like. You know, we did this at home or whatever. So any kind of experience that you can give them is always good. So I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about each of those things now. Talking to babies. Everybody talks to babies like, you know how people talk to babies. They're like, oh, you're just so cute. You know, your voice gets a little bit higher. You exaggerate things maybe a little bit. And it's actually called parentese, which I did not realize until I started doing some research. And it's not necessarily a bad thing as long as those words that you're saying are said completely and that they're pronounced correctly. So the kids are still getting the information, they're getting the correct information, but you're saying it in such a way that is more pleasing to them, possibly. And you know, babies don't understand necessarily what you're saying, but if you say it in a way that is soothing and nice, then that does help them absorb a little bit better. You can point to body parts on yourself and on babies. So if you're talking about, you know, your nose, show them their nose and show them your nose, and then they can kind of start making those connections of what things are. Talk about things in the room. I used to do this all the time with my niece when she was fussy. I would hold her and walk around the room and we'd talk about, you know, different objects throughout the room. playing peekaboo, patty cake. They love that physical, the touch component, because they learn through all of their senses. Baby safe toys, you can talk about their toys, what color they are. Just talking about just about anything with babies is great, because they are building their vocabulary as you talk to them. Toddlers, they can follow some directions a little bit. They can start following simple directions, which is great. So you can maybe ask them to bring their shoes or something, and they should be able to eventually do that for you. They also love to pretend play. So, just having a phone, an old phone laying around that you don't use anymore or whatever, have them pretend to call them and have them have a conversation with you. It may not make any sense. It doesn't matter. They're learning how those sorts of things work. Kids really, really like their names, and so if that's a good place to start with writing or with speaking, spelling. Their names are a great place to start because they hear their name a lot, and they know it's theirs, so they kind of really like that. They're more motivated to learn when it's about them. You can ask open-ended questions about things in a book, especially pictures. I wouldn't go too far into that. I mean, sometimes when you're reading a book, you want to pick and choose the places where you ask questions. You don't want to be asking a question on every single page or anything. But just ask questions about the pictures, especially a book that maybe you've read 4, 5, 6 times or more, because they know that book, and they can maybe make up their own story about whatever is going on in the pictures, or maybe they have their own ideas about how things should be. I don't know. You don't know until you ask them. So generally, talking to kids, slow down. We all talk super, super fast, and they don't really understand. Speak clearly so that they can understand. Try to be present with them while you're talking, and try and make eye contact as much as possible. And be conscious of how you're saying things, because you may be upset about something that happened with someone else, and if you talk to your child with that tone, they're going to definitely pick that up. So just make sure that you try to be level when you're talking to them. And then just inject talking into everyday things. If you go to the grocery store, talk to them while you're at the grocery store about whatever you're buying and putting in your cart or whatever. So it really is everyday things that you can do. Singing, I don't know if a lot of people sing to their kids. I am a horrible singer. I don't care. Kids don't care. They honestly have no qualms about people singing. They love it. With babies, it's a great way to bond. They love the closeness. Usually it's like one-on-one kind of thing with babies where you're holding them and singing to them. It's great to soothe them. It helps them with their listening skills. And it's just a fun time to hang out and be with your baby. You can make up songs. I sometimes will take tunes and make up totally different words. And if you know Wheels on the Bus or whatever, you can make that up, make it into a different game. We do Seals on the Bus, and then you do animal noises, and you can really play with stuff. Add the baby's name into things as much as possible, because they love their names. And singing songs that have a physical element, like Pat Cake or I'm trying to think what else. Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, something that they that there's movement, or the little piggies one.
Itsy Bitsy Spider.
Itsy Bitsy Spider, that's a good one. Love that one. So Toddlers is fairly similar. I mean, it's a little bit less one-on-one because you're not necessarily holding them all the time, and they get more physical. They love like Itsy Bitsy Spider, Wheels on the Bus, things like that they can learn the movements to it too. And repetition in all of these things is great, because the more you repeat something, the stronger their connection is in their brain for that. So they may want to sing Itsy Bitsy Spider 400 times in a row. Maybe not 400, but a lot. I mean, they do really get attached to different songs and different books, and that's great. That's fine. Singing and rhyming helps develop their vocabulary. Sometimes just playing rhyming games, pick a word and then see how many words you can come up with that rhyme with that word. I do that all the time with my niece. She loves it. And then she'll throw like a curveball in because she's a little bit goofy, kind of like me. And she'll say, we'll be rhyming cat. And all of a sudden she's like, fox! And she just laughs. I'm like, oh, you're crazy. So it helps them develop their sense of humor too. So singing with toddlers, you can do that throughout the day. Like I said, movement, repetition, very, very good stuff for them. Wheels on the Bus is a favorite. Change the verses, like I said. Pokey Pokey, I like to make it silly. We stick our tongues out a lot, and our tails. And then Itsy Bitsy Spider, I changed that up too, and I use the Great Big Spider, we use the big spider voice, and the Itsy Spider, the little voice. And then Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes. Sounds boring, but when you speed it up and slow it down, it's a lot more fun. So generally, just singing to babies is one-on-one, more or less. Good thing to soothe them and calm them, if they're fussy. Repetition in both groups is great. Do not worry about your singing voice. I don't care. And you can use recorded music, CDs, or your iPad or whatever, but they really like the interaction of you singing to them more. So a little bit of both would be good. And just make it fun. So reading to babies, very important. I know they look like they don't understand, and they don't look like they know what they're doing. They're just like, and when I first started doing baby story time, it threw me because I was used to the preschoolers, and they would interact with you and point at the pictures and things, and babies don't do that, and I didn't really know how to handle that. I was like, I don't know what's going on. But it is good, and you can tell they are actually present and listening. So according to RIF, which is of course the Reading is Fundamental group, a child develops language skills long before being able to speak. So it is important to start when they're younger, well, as soon as possible. It enhances vocabulary and communication and language skills, all kinds of good stuff. So in order to make it fun and comfortable, make sure that baby doesn't need a diaper change, doesn't need food, is comfortable, find a good spot in the house that's not distracting and kind of quiet and nice. Short books, colorful pictures of babies they love. Baby sitting on the lap facing the book is kind of normally how people would read to a baby. Keep it short. If they do start fussing, it's time for something else. Just move on to something else until later in the day or whatever. Sometimes they can sit for 10 minutes. Sometimes it's 2 minutes. It just depends on what's going on. So you don't want to hold them on against their will while you read to them, because that isn't very pleasant for anybody. So reading to toddlers is not teaching them how to read. If we were teaching them how to read, we would use very much shorter books than what we use for toddlers. We generally read picture books to toddlers. So basically what we're doing is trying to develop their attention spans and their listening skills, and you can tell the difference between a kid who is just starting to learn to listen to books. They may sit for the first couple of pages and then they're wandering around, and then as they kind of progress, they sit through more and more books, and so you can actually see that happening, which is pretty cool. And also reading to them helps them to understand how stories work, that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's sometimes conflict and resolution, hopefully resolution. Sometimes they like to read just one type of book. Like, I know a lot of boys really just like trains. That's all they want. And trains are great, but you want to slip a couple other ones in there in between just to get them a little bit more acclimated to different things. Let them turn the pages. Let them learn how a book works. Even babies. Babies love to stick them in their mouths, but that's how they learn. So That's why we have board books and they don't fall apart after, being thrown around or anything. Ask a few questions as you go along the story. Like I said, especially if it's something that you've repeated over and over again. They really like to talk about the pictures a lot. Sometimes without any provocation, they'll just come, hey, look at that. And just have books available. So it's okay to read just a couple of minutes a day, several times a day. It's okay to maybe find a spot or a couple of spots in the routine of the day. Maybe we read in the morning after a nap, or you read in the evening before bedtime, or maybe a little bit at both times. So just build it into the routine. Let the kids see you reading. That's huge. If they see that you're reading and that you enjoy reading, then they will think that that's a great thing too. So they will want to do it because they want to copy you. And make it fun. Writing doesn't really start at the baby stage, so we're going to start more at like the year-old stage. So having things available for them to write with and on is a good idea. They need to start forming their fine motor skills, so they're going to pick up the crayon probably with the fist and just make crazy looking scribbles that don't mean anything. It's the random scribbling stage. So it's important to go through this stage and not to try to correct it too much, because it's just part of learning how, the motions and the movements and how to hold things. So it's not a bad thing at all. And then once they're about 2 to 3, they move into the controlled scribbling stage. I love the way they say these things. The controlled scribbling stage starts to look more like actual words. They can change their grip a little bit and use like forefingers instead of the fist grip. So you can kind of guide them into that direction, because they should be able to by then have some of the muscle control that they can use that grip. And like I said, the scribbles start to look more like writing and less like scribbles. Although they still look really scribbly. Some of my coworkers still look really scribbly, and they're adults. So, and then between 2.5 and 3.5, they start to kind of pick up on shapes of letters, especially if you've been reading to them a lot and pointing out words in books. So once they develop their fine motor skills to the point where they can actually hold the pencil in the way that we're used to with the pincer grip, then you can start to see improvements in the shapes of their letters. And you could, at this point, even give them, a word to write, particularly their name. Maybe have them try and copy what is written on the page. There are other ways to strengthen the fine motor skills, to get as part of pre-writing skills. Playing with Play-Doh is a great way to do it, because they are always pinching it and pulling it, and they're using those fine motor skills for those. Puzzles with knobs on them are really great. Some of those boards with buckles, snaps, buttons, zippers, those sorts of things are good for them to be able to learn how to do things, close and small. Legos or Duplos, probably Duplos at that age, actually. So they can learn how to put them together and take them apart, and they will love to do it over and over again. We've used plastic eyedroppers to move water from one container to another, which doesn't sound like that much fun, but if you put a little food coloring in the water or something, love it. Tweezers, tongs, spoons to move things from one bucket to another. They like to dump things out, so it's a lot of fun. Turkey basters, pinching them to blow stuff around too is fun. So just keep things in keep writing instruments out for them to play with when they need to, and incorporate into their play. So sometimes if you're playing restaurant, they can have a notepad and they can pretend to write your order. I remember doing that when I was a kid. It's part of play. They're pretending, and they're also learning their motor skills, which is great. Let's see. Displaying things is important. So if you display something that they've made, they know that that's important and that they've done a good job, and that will encourage them to do more. And play. Play is one of my favorite things because it's so much fun. There's so many things you can do with it. Because children learn through play by imitating, by observing, by experiencing things, and by just discovering with all of their senses. So they're like all in. They love like mud, and not all kids though. Some kids don't like mud at all, or even dough. They're like, yeah, I don't know. So you kind of have to, you know your kids. You have to know what is going to work for them and what's not. Outdoor playing is huge because they do need their gross motor skills too, balance and coordination and things like that. And the fact that play like different ages. So we'll go through that really quick. So by about 3 months, babies can actually start moving with purpose. They're not just like laying around. And there are different ways that you can kind of play with babies by just moving things in their vision, in their line of vision, so they can start trying to focus on the objects. They can start learning to move their heads to follow things. Shaking to rattle and doing the same thing with that is also a good way to get them to move a little bit. Tummy time is terribly important. It builds their core muscle skills, and you can put like a book or something in front of them so they have something to look at and play with while they're on their tummies. 6 months to a year, they're kind of getting a little bit more mobile, sometimes really mobile. And they love to do something over and over again. If you build them a tower of blocks, they will knock it over. If you rebuild it, they will knock it over again. And it's great because they love it. And they also love toys with knobs and buttons and things that they have to turn. We have one of our favorite toys that we put out for babies is just one of those little things that if you turn a knob, the little dude pops up. They love that thing. They can play with it all day long. Good old-fashioned blocks, cheap, really good. They can build different things with them. They can eat them. They do that a lot. Shape sorters, stacking rings, all these things that, these things were around. They've been around for years, and there are reasons for that. These are the kinds of things that are, developing all of the things that they need, and they're easy. They're just, I don't know, they're kind of classic. Containers that they can fill up and dump out. It's fun. Do that over and over again. And push and pull toys, always fun. So toddlers use about the same kinds of things. I mean, they love the stacking blocks. They love filling and dumping. They also like musical instruments at this point. They like to make the noise. So shakers, bells, those sorts of things are always fun. You can also start introducing some art activities, maybe painting. Finger painting is fun. Sidewalk chalk during the summer. And just gluing things. Just give them a glue stick and some paper and let them glue. And they also benefit more from gross motor skills, so taking them outside, letting them play maybe like hopscotch or jump rope or something like that outside. Maybe not jump rope, 1 to 2 years is pretty young. But they can follow lines on the ground. If you draw a chalk line, they'll follow that. Or with tape inside. 2 to 3 years, they're still playing pretty much with the same kind of toys, but they also are adding dramatic play into their lives. They're going to start using their imaginations a little bit more, and they like to come up with stories. They like to tell stories. If you give them a few things, a few props, generally they'll go with it. Sometimes, it's nice to have an actual phone for them to use, but if you don't, you could make one out of Lego and give it to them and say, this is a phone. And that creates their imagination a little bit. That helps them develop that part of play. Play food, cash registers, give them a scenario and let them go. And I think it's important too, like especially if there are other children, which is ideal really for them to play with other kids, just to kind of step back a little bit and let them, and see what they do. See if they can kind of come up with their own ideas. And also problem-solving skills at this age, they're really starting to developing those. They want to take things apart. They want to see what happens if I do this instead. So that's important to help them develop that, and not always run to their aid and say, no, that's not how that works. Because maybe they're going to find a different way to use a toy that you wouldn't have even thought of. They really think out the box pretty well. So, basically, early learning skills are all kinds of skills. It's not just about reading, it's about talking, making sure that you're building vocabulary, that kids are hearing words. I know so often, parents maybe don't talk very much. My cousin is very quiet. And I thought, how do you talk to your kids at home? And I don't think she does. And I don't understand that because I'm very talkative. So, but just talking to kids is great. Reading is a different way of getting getting different words into their language, because we don't talk the way people write. I mean, generally speaking. So as you're reading, you're developing more vocabulary than if you're just talking to them. But taking them out for a walk, different experiences, different kinds of dogs that they see on your walks, or just anything that will stimulate them and make them, just give them more experience in life, that they can take that out with them when they do start to go to school, and they can, maybe start making more connections in their brains. So that's about it, I think. Pinterest is where I go for everything. It really is a great resource for finding those kinds of games and things that you can play with them that don't cost much. I use cookie sheets and magnets a lot because they're cheap. Most of the time you have something like that at your house anyway, so just buy some magnetic letters or something and make a game out of it. It's really pretty easy. Two of my favorite boards on Pinterest are Deborah at Teach Preschool and Growing a Jeweled Rose. Those two are awesome. I use those almost entirely. And of course, the library is another great resource. We have all kinds of books for all ages here. We have books on how to do things as parents. We have books on growing up, so potty training and, getting rid of the pacifier and things like that. So we have books on a wide range of things. And of course, obviously, when kids get older, we have books that they can use, and books and other resources they can use for discovering things at school, or if you're just interested in a topic. I had a little girl when I first started here. She was so curious about everything, and she would come up and she'd say, "Miss Kerry, I need a book about how they make olive oil." This was an actual question. I'm like, olive oil, okay. So we found a book. We actually found a child's book. It wasn't at our library, but we found one. And I got it for her so she could learn how they make olive oil. So you just never know what you're going to get. And it's nice to have a wide range of resources, and the library really can provide that because we have access to millions and millions of things. So please use us as much as possible. We do have story times during the whole year, basically. Our story times are for babies and for toddlers. And they are Wednesdays and Thursdays at 9:30 and 10. And we do those in sessions. So we have 6 to 7 week sessions, and then we'll have a 4-week break. So right now we're in the middle of our break, and we're coming back on September 7th. And I think I put those out there. So does anybody have any questions? Really have questions? I talk fast. All right, well, thank you.